Clara managed to find her way through the darkness and back to her dormitory. To her shock, the head teacher, Elder Rufus, was already waiting for her. "Where are you coming from?" Elder Rufus screamed at Clara. Clara was in shock, but hid it well. Just as she was about to explain herself, Elder Rufus received a signal on her walkie-talkie. It was Nun Ruth, her co-nun, informing her that 2 boys were also missing from their room. Their beds were empty. This threw Elder Rufus into a state of confusion. She thought she had caught the culprit. Nun Ruth soon arrived at the girls' corridor with the 2 boys, who turned out to be Danny and Brown. Clara, being extremely smart, had prepared for the unexpected. She had secretly arranged a night date with Danny and Brown, asking them to wait for her at a secret spot outside. She promised them that she would finally choose one of them as her boyfriend. This plan was meant to serve as a perfect alibi in case she was caught outside her room that night. Seeing that the lights went out suddenly, Clara decided to hide the bag containing the tape she had retrieved from Elder Rufus's office behind a separate building in the school. The boys confirmed Clara's story, explaining that they were waiting for her outside because they had a secret date. "So why were you returning to your room without meeting the boys?" Elder Rufus asked angrily, hoping to catch Clara in a lie. Clara calmly replied, "I forgot to spray my perfume, so I was returning to put it on when I bumped into you." Elder Rufus was fuming, realizing she might have been wrong and that the real culprit might have gotten away. Nun Ruth, after hearing all that Clara had planned with the 2 boys, began to scream angrily at them. "You mean boys and girls in this school are still having secret meetings outside at night? Do you want to destroy the reputation of our school for good?" Nun Ruth scoffed bitterly. This was the same thing that happened many years ago that led to Anita Benson's death and almost destroyed this school. "Do you want such a thing to repeat itself?" she raged. "Quiet!" Elder Rufus screamed at Nun Ruth, who immediately fell silent. Elder Rufus then turned to the students and warned them that this should be the last time she hears of such meetings at night. "Next time, there will be suspensions," she said before dismissing them. Before entering into her room, Clara overheard Elder Rufus and Nun Ruth plan a secret meeting. "Meet me in my office by 6 p.m. tomorrow with Nun Betha. Something is going on, and we have to get to the bottom of this," Elder Rufus said angrily. Anita Benson's name was mentioned. Nun Ruth must know about her. Whatever happened to Anita Benson must have involved meeting with boys at night. Clara knew she had to get to the bottom of what had happened to Anita Benson. As she returned to her room, she smiled to herself, grateful that her plan had worked. Now she needed to retrieve her bag and watch the original tape she had taken from Elder Rufus's office. She prayed that night that Elder Rufus would not find out that she had replaced the tape she took from the shelf with a fake one. As fate would have it, Elder Rufus checked her secret room and found everything intact. This left her wondering if the leaf might have accidentally fallen off the door, and she was mistaken. But that was impossible, she thought. The next morning, Elder Rufus scanned through the CCTV footage to see what had happened the previous night, but there was nothing. No record of her office or the hallways. It was just red showing on the screen. She was fuming. Someone was on to her and must be playing a smart game. Perhaps the culprit used the students as a diversion. The time she spent with them could have been used to catch the culprit leaving through the gate or even the fence. She had to get to the bottom of it, but time was not on her side that day, as she had a national school conference to attend that morning. She made a plan she was going to discuss with Nun Ruth and the other nun upon her return. Elder Rufus left to attend the conference, leaving Clara with a small window of time to investigate further. Clara quickly rushed to the empty computer room and began watching the tape. First, she saw 3 male students sneaking out through the hallway at night. A few minutes later, a dark-skinned girl followed after them. The tape continued, showing the empty hallway. After a few more minutes, the girl returned, going through the hallway, but this time she was bleeding from her private parts, crying in pain. She was raped. Who then cleaned up the blood and covered up the crime? Clara thought as she continued to watch the disturbing recording. As she fast-forwarded the tape, because she had little time left, Clara saw Elder Rufus angrily reprimanding the three boys for something serious. The boys seemed remorseful, but Elder Rufus scolded them. "You are lucky your parents have been supporting me financially to get this school to where it is today. If not, the three of you would be rotting in jail by now." "What is your problem?" she said angrily. "Do you want to destroy the reputation of this school and all my hard work? Is it because your parents are senators, so you feel you can just do whatever and get away with it? I am warning you. Let this be the last time such a thing occurs, or I won't cover up your tracks if there is a second time. Do you understand me?" The boys nodded, saying they were sorry, and left Elder Rufus's office. As Clara continued to watch, she saw the recording of Anita Benson crying on her bed in her dormitory as she muttered to herself, "Why won't Elder Rufus believe me? I was raped. I did not throw myself at the boys when I snuck out to meet them that night. Ken deceived me. I thought he loved me. Why won't Elder Rufus believe me?" She said, "There is no proof. I have no proof. It was not consensual. It was rape," Anita screamed as she wallowed in her pain. "If I had known they would rape me, I would not have sneaked out to meet with them. I am not a cheap slut. Now she wants to report me to my parents. My parents would kill me. They sacrificed all they had for me to attend this school. My parents would kill me. I was raped. I am not a cheap slut," Anita Benson cried and cried. The remaining part of the video clip showed Anita Benson taking her own life and her body being carried away by an ambulance, and the three boys, Ken Okara, Travis Davis, and Taffer Olatunji, being expelled from the school the following week. Elder Rufus had kept the recording of all that had happened during that period to use it as evidence should the senators decide to come after her for expelling their sons. She knew she had done her best to cover up their crimes and save them from jail time. She succeeded in hiding the story behind the suicide and managed to maintain the reputation and status of the school in the public eye. The tape revealed a harsh and unfair reality, leading to Clara's realization of the dark secret the school had been hiding all along. But what about the dead nun? How was all this related to her murder? Clara thought. The more she uncovered, the more determined she became to get to the truth. Clara quickly put together a manual tin telephone, intending to eavesdrop on the secret meeting the nuns were scheduled to have at 6 p.m. that day. When the time came, Clara stood outside the door and pointed the receiving tin towards the small gap beneath the door, while placing the transmitting tin to her ear. She could hear every detail of the conversation inside the dimly lit room where the nuns were discussing. Elder Rufus was screaming at Nun Ruth. "How dare you reveal what happened to Anita Benson and the boys? Do you want us exposed?" "It was a mistake on my part," Nun Ruth replied, feeling guilty. "Still, you keep slipping up all the time," Elder Rufus continued angrily. "This is the same way I asked you to dilute that acid, and you didn't. Nun Sarah died that night in the forest because of your mistake. You turned us into murderers when all we wanted to do was make her dumb. You caused all this in the first place." "But Elder Rufus," Nun Betha interrupted, "we can't keep blaming Nun Ruth for what happened. You remember the details. You called us for a meeting that night on how we were going to cover up the crime of the senator's children. And she, the so-called holier-than-thou, said she was going to expose it. Everyone else present agreed to the plan, but she kept supporting Anita Benson blindly, saying she couldn't let the girls suffer for nothing. She was not thinking of all the pain, sweat, and blood we went through to establish this school, which is all we have. Acting like she wouldn't soil her hands committing such a minor sin, when she's the same person sneaking out at night to go to parties wearing those stupid red heels. No, Nun Sarah had it coming for her. We had to do what we had to do to silence her. It was only sad we made a mistake and she died. But we actually did not do anything wrong," Nun Betha concluded. "I know all that," Elder Rufus continued. "The problem is, we cannot be slack or let our guard down concerning it. It was never to be mentioned again, especially in the presence of others. I think someone is onto us. We have to eliminate any remaining evidence. Let's meet up tonight in the forest where Nun Sarah was buried by 12 p.m. We'll dig up whatever's left of her corpse and burn it, along with all the tapes I kept. This thing must not be uncovered by anyone." The nuns agreed and dismissed the meeting. Clara rushed to the forest and summoned the spirit of Nun Sarah. There she narrated everything that had truly happened, revealing the culprits and the circumstances of her death. Nun Sarah's rage was immense. The people she had called sisters were the very ones who had murdered her in cold blood. Clara returned to her dormitory feeling a sense of fulfillment. But that night, at 8 p.m., the footsteps began again in the corridor outside the dormitory. But this time, it was the nuns who awoke to the sound. The steps entered their rooms. Though they could not see who or what it was, Nun Sarah could finally see her murderers clearly. One by one, she took their lives. It was a somber morning as the 3 nuns were laid to rest in their graves. "Thank you," Nun Sarah said to Clara. "My spirit can rest now. We will meet again on the other side someday, but I pray it's not anytime soon," she added before fading completely away for the last time. A new head teacher was appointed. The school returned to normal, and Anita Benson was remembered and honored. Classes went on as usual, and Clara's time in the dormitory was now filled with peace and tranquility. The new head teacher, Noon Simi, led the school with grace and utmost transparency. To rekindle excitement among the students, she planned a midterm awards event to recognize and celebrate their excellent academic performances. Everything seemed to be going smoothly until, back at the graveyard where the nuns were buried, a terrifying noise began to echo. Elder Rufus's spirit, unable to find peace, stirred restlessly in her grave. The school, which she had given her entire life to, was now under someone else's control. This reality was unbearable for her, and her spirit rose from the grave, determined to reclaim her place. No one else was going to sit in the head teacher's seat. No one but her. Her ghostly figure made its way back to the school and slipped into her old office. She settled into the head teacher's chair, continuing her duties as if she had never left. It began with eerie noises, strange movements heard from the head teacher's office every night. The sounds grew louder and more disturbing. At night, people could hear the sound of movements from the head teacher's office. This continued for a while until one night, the new head teacher, Nun Simi, decided she had to find out what was going on. As Nun Simi entered the office, a cold, ominous presence enveloped her. She began to tremble uncontrollably, sweat dripping down her body. Before she could react, she saw the ghost of Elder Rufus sitting at her desk. Just as she was about to scream, the ghost lunged at her, entering her body and taking control. By the next morning, it was Elder Rufus who was in charge of the school, using Nun Simi's body as a vessel. The long-awaited Variety and Awards Day arrived, and the best-performing students were recognized. Clara received an award for her outstanding academic performance, as did another student, a bright and intelligent boy named Dio. Elder Rufus, watching through Nun Simi's eyes, took note of him. As Dio received his award, Clara noticed that he seemed unusually sad. Concerned, she followed him after the ceremony and found him sitting alone on a bench in the garden. "You seemed sad during the award ceremony. What's wrong?" Clara asked, her voice filled with genuine concern. "Today should be a happy day for you." Dio began to explain his worries to Clara, his voice heavy with the burden he carried. He spoke of his mother, a widow working 3 jobs to afford his school fees at the prestigious Royal Secondary School. She toiled as a construction worker, carrying cement, washing dishes, and laundering clothes just to provide for him. Despite being the best student in his class, Dio had not met the high cutoff for the scholarship that would have relieved some of his mother's burden. This weighed heavily on him, filling him with guilt and sadness. Clara listened intently, then gently consoled him. "Don't lose hope, Dio. You're doing your best, and your mother knows that. Just keep pushing forward. You'll make her proud, and one day, you'll be able to repay her for all her sacrifices." Dio, comforted by Clara's words, thanked her and returned to his dormitory, a little lighter in spirit. But that very night, the ghost of Elder Rufus began to enact her malevolent plans using Nun Simi's body. Nun Simi, now completely under the ghost's control, began to walk towards the boys' dormitory. When she reached the corridor, Elder Rufus's spirit leaped out of her body, leaving Nun Simi frozen in place. Elder Rufus headed straight for Dio's room. If she couldn't reap the fruits of her labor in life, she would ensure the school never thrived in her absence. She would destroy anything good that could bring praise to the institution. starting with the bright young boy who had just been awarded. As Deo slept on his bunk, he was startled awake by the sound of footsteps. Fear gripped him as the footsteps grew louder, stopping just outside his door. "Who's there?" he managed to whisper, but before he could react, the ghost of Elder Rufus appeared before him. The sight of her ghastly figure paralyzed him with fear, and before he could scream for help, it was too late. Elder Rufus carried out his lifeless body as she walked down the corridor back into Nunsimi's body. She buried the body in the school's backyard, ensuring her evil deed was hidden from the world. The next day, in her home, Dayo's mother, Miss Olabode, felt a deep sense of unease. She had been restless all morning. She called the school to inform the head teacher that she had finally paid the remaining balance of Dayo's school fees, completing the 500,000 naira for the year. "Congratulations, madam," Nunsimi said, her voice smooth and calm, masking the sinister truth. "Thank you. Can I speak to my son, please? I miss him so much, and I hope he's doing well in his classes," Dayo's mother asked, her voice filled with a mother's love and concern. "Oh, nothing to worry about, Miss Olabode. Dayo is doing extremely well and is safe and sound," Nunsimi replied, a mysterious grin spreading across her face. "Thank you so much, Ma. God bless you. Please tell my baby that his mummy loves him dearly," Miss Olabode said before ending the call. Yet, despite the reassurances, her unease persisted. Deep down, she knew something was wrong, but she had no idea the reason for the gut feeling she was having. The following day, news spread that Dayo was missing. The entire school was in chaos. No one knew where he had gone. Clara, who had spoken to him the previous day, was devastated. She cried in Danny's arms as he tried to console her. "Dayo will be found soon," he whispered, trying to comfort her. "I pray nothing bad happens to him. He was a good child. If anything happens to him, his mother won't be able to take it," Clara replied. Together they prayed for his safety, unaware that the worst had already occurred. Weeks passed, and Elder Rufus continued her midnight killings, targeting the brightest students and taking their lives one by one. More students went missing, and soon the story made headlines. Mrs. Dorothy, Clara's mother, sat in her living room reading the newspaper. The headline about students going missing from the Royal Secondary School sent chills down her spine. Clara had warned them something was wrong at the school. She called her husband, and together they decided they would get their daughter out the next day, before it was too late. But that same night back in the school, Clara could not sleep. She knew something was terribly wrong as more students disappeared each day. Desperate to come up with a solution, she paced her room before deciding to walk to the window for some fresh air. As she gazed out, she saw something that froze her blood. Nunsimi, burying another student in the darkness of the school's backyard. Clara watched in horror as the head teacher completed her grim task, then suddenly looked back, her eyes meeting Clara's with a bitter, menacing glare. Clara quickly ducked away from the window, her heart pounding in her chest. She had seen it with her own eyes. Nunsimi was the one killing the missing students. She knew she had to get to the police the next morning. She had to call her parents. Someone had to save them from this nightmare. But what Clara did not know was that Elder Rufus had seen her too. As Clara sat back on her bunk, her heart pounding like a drum in her chest, the footsteps began again. Each heavy step echoed ominously through the silent dormitory, growing louder and closer until it halted just outside her door. The air grew thick with dread. Clara's breath caught in her throat, her body paralyzed by the sheer terror that gripped her. And then, as if summoned by her fear, the ghost of Elder Rufus materialized before her, anger blazing in her hollow eyes. She lingered there, her gaze piercing into Clara, the one who dared to stand in the way of her unholy vengeance. The silence was suffocating, broken only by the cold, cruel smile that spread across the ghost's face as she advanced. Clara's heart raced. "What do you want?" Clara struggled to mutter, but the ghost, Elder Rufus, had not come for a negotiation that fateful night. The next day, Mrs. Dorothy and her husband, Mr. Tolu, drove as fast as they could to Royal Secondary School. It was a long, anxiety-filled journey, but they were determined to reach their daughter. As they neared the school, they suddenly encountered a roadblock, a large log of wood blocking the main road. They couldn't go any further. Desperate, they turned back to try another route, But to their horror, they kept finding themselves at the same spot, no matter which way they turned. It was as if they were trapped in a never-ending nightmare. The road twisted and turned in a grotesque loop, bringing them back to the same point, again and again. The sky seemed to darken with each failed attempt, the air growing thick with a suffocating sense of doom. Panic set in as the realization dawned. Something, or someone, was preventing them from reaching their daughter. The school, once a place of learning and safety, now stood as a fortress of terror, unreachable by any earthly means. "Clara," Mrs. Dorothy whispered, her voice choked with fear. Tears streamed down her face as the cold truth gripped her heart. They were losing Clara to something far more sinister than they could ever comprehend. And then, as if on cue, the car's engine sputtered and died, plunging them into an eerie silence. The dark forest around them seemed to come alive with whispers, as unseen eyes watched their every move. The last shred of hope slipped away, leaving them stranded in the maw of an evil that had claimed their daughter long before they had even set out. The lesson to be learned from this story is to always heed your child's warnings and complaints, no matter how trivial they may seem. In their innocent words may lie the key to their safety. As an old adage says, the chick that cries most is closest to the hawk. Always pay attention. Thank you so much for watching. Please leave a like, share, and comment, and I'll see you in our next story.